Choose any ATM of your convenience and stand a chance to win gold sovereigns.
Lanka Pay.
With the announcement of moving to single policy interest rate, we will be moving from a dual policy interest rate mechanism to single policy interest rate mechanism. And we call newly introduced single policy rate as overnight policy rate. And that has been now set at 8%. And that will serve as the primary monetary policy tool for signaling and operationalizing monetary policy stance. And we expect to target to maintain the overnight average weighted cold money market rate, which is the operational target of flexible inflation targeting framework, at around the newly announced OPR. And with the introduction of a single policy interest rate, the SDFR and SLFR, which were considered as policy interest rates earlier, will no longer serve as policy interest rates. So SDFR and SLFR will be linked to the OPR with a predetermined margin by the central bank. SLFR will be a plus margin with OPR and SDFR will be with a minus margin with OPR. So yesterday at the Monetary Policy Board, the Monetary Policy Board has decided to further ease the monetary policy stance of the central bank. With this, the overnight policy rate has been set at 8% and statutory reserve ratio remains at unchanged at 2%. So with this change, the effective rate reduction will be around 50 basis points compared with the average weighted cold money rate that was prevailing at the time of moving to the single policy interest rate. Major considerations are deeper than expected inflation in the near term, with further moderation in underlying inflation pressures and inflation expectations, and better than expected developments on the external front, and lack of further space available for reduction in market lending rates.
ජාතන උල්ලාරබුල සමග පවතින ඒ දිවිසුමේ වැඩපිළිවෙලේ තුන්වෙනි සමාලෝචනය සාර්ථක අවසන්.
Following the successful conclusion of the third review of the IMF program, we have reached a staff-level agreement. After the government presents the budget, we anticipate receiving approval from the IMF Executive Board and the release of the next tranche soon. In addition, we are nearing the conclusion of the restructuring of international sovereign bonds. The government 2 days ago decided to issue new bonds to replace the expired ones. Consequently, the new bonds issuance was launched yesterday with a haircut and a lower interest rate. We expect to finalize this process with the participation of the majority of bondholders within the next 3 weeks. Our projection indicates that the economy will normalize within the coming year. The monetary policy stance has already improved, and we are assured of the continuation of the IMF program. Therefore, we are confident that the economy can be effectively managed, leading a greater financial stability and economic growth in the next year.
මූලික අවශ්‍ය මූලික පියවර රාශියක් දැන් සම්පූර්ණ කරලා දෙන යනුව ඒක ඒ අනුව ආර්ථිකය ඉදිරියට කල්පනා කරන හැකි වෙයි කියලා බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා.
උද්දමනය දැන් අවදමන තත්යකට පත් වෙලා ඉන උද්දමනයක් ඉදිරි කාලයක් තිස්සේ පවතින්න පුළුවන් කියලා. නමුත් ඒ පරාසයටත් වඩා ඉවතට ගිහිල්ලා අඩු වුණාම ඒකත් ගැටලුවක් නේද?
ඔය ඒක නිසා තමයි අපි අර මේ ඒක එක වැඩ පිළිවෙලක් තමයි උඩ මතක ඇති කලින් අරගෙන අපි අර මුල ප්‍රතිපත්තිය ලිහිල් කිරීමේ ක්‍රියාදාමයේ දිගටම ඉන්න ඊට පස්සේ.
That is precisely why we have taken steps to address the situation by easing policy rates. This is one of the measures to bring deflation within the target range. The main factors contributing to higher than expected deflation include reduced electricity and fuel prices due to price formulas as well as a stable exchange rate. Core inflation remains at 3 to 4%, while headline inflation is currently below target levels. We expect inflation to align closer to 5% moving forward, and the recent policy decisions are aimed at achieving that. Credit supply has also improved, which we believe will foster economic growth and further support our inflation targets.
උදව් වේ ඉදිරියේදී උද්දමනයේ නැතත් යථා තත්ත්වයට සාමාන්‍ය තත්ත්වයට පත් කර ගැනීමට ගන්න ක්‍රියාමාර්ග.
කාලයක් පුරාවටම ඍණ මට්ටමක තියෙන උද්දමනයේ යම්කිසි ආකාරයක අහිතකර බලපෑමක් ඇති වෙන්න පුළුවන් ආර්ථිකයට.
ඒක දීර්ඝකාලීනව පවතින නම් අවදමනය ඒක අහිතකර තත්ත්වයක් තමයි.
Yes, if deflation persists for an extended period, it can have adverse effects. However, it is important to note that we are transitioning from a period of hyperinflation. Previously, inflation rates were around 70%, with cost of living at 80 to 90% and food inflation exceeding 100%. I believe the deflation we are experiencing is, to some extent, a correction from the previous period of hyperinflation.
අවදමනයේ තියෙන එක මම හිතන්නේ ඒක අපි දකින්නේ යම්කිසි correction එකක් විදියට.
Do you see this as a start to the end of the easing cycle? Do you feel that there will be a pause?
I think whether this is going to be a end of easing cycle or remain at this level, we have to wait and see in the next review. We will be closely monitoring the response of the economy in terms of inflation expectations, in terms of economic activities, and also the closing the output gap going forward, and also the real interest rates, plus the balance of payment. But we are seeing for the time being, we think this is an appropriate monetary policy stance. But I don't expect kind of the sharp easing that we had from last year to this year. I don't expect that kind of trend will continue.
So can you predict a GDP growth for the end of this year and mid next year?
At the end of this year, we already indicated this will be 4.5 to 5% compared to, I think, World Bank or ADB announced 4.4% for this year. For the next year, it's still too early for us to make a firm projection, but we can say the baseline would basically going to be 3%. We are very confident that economy will certainly grow well above 3%.
Yeah, and when you said continuation of the IMF program, what does it mean? Like
continuation means the key parameters under the IMF program, like the primary surplus of 2.3%, the revenue GDP target of around 15%, and the inflation target maintained medium to long-term inflation 5%, and the building of reserves to a much more comfortable level so that our external repayment capacity, carrying capacity would be increased, and also the completion of debt restructuring. Those parameters has been assured to be maintained going forward. So those are the key parameters. Within that, there could be certain here and there changes. Those changes one can see when this is approved by the executive board somewhere in February next year. Now, level of reserves right now is gross reserves 6.5 billion. Remember the targets under the IMF program, net internal reserves. We have commitment to build up to this certain level. We are actually building more than what was expected. It's kind of overperformance, building up official reserves. Building reserves continuously on steady basis, as well as stable currency and bit of appreciation also in the last couple of weeks. I think going forward also we'll continue to build up, and we want to build more. Actually, this is an important buffer for a country to meet any external debt service or any other obligations.
On the debt exchange, there's a deadline of December 12th. So if some people miss that, or if they don't exchange, what will happen to those like residual bonds?
I think what we hope that is that within this 3-week period, there will be marketing, and we hope that there will be a sufficient participation. There are certain thresholds. We are very positive that all the thresholds will be met. If not, there are options even for us to exchange for the period. That's not an issue.
Do you expect like about 90% take up or 95%?
Bondholders' point of view, it has sufficient incentives for them to participate in terms of exchange fee, in terms of macro-linked bonds that they were asking, a lot of incentives and encouragement for them to participate and get new bonds.